Hello and welcome back to the Matchbook NFL podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined by the three guys of Sam Farley, Judah Fortgang, and Drew Dinsick to cover NFL Week 5. And before we get into it, Sam, we're in the middle of the London series. London series have been going on a while. It's an exciting time to be an NFL fan. There's obviously German games. There's talk of loads of international games. Us in Ireland and in Dublin are hopeful that the Aviva will get a game one day in the next few years as well. So just sum up that experience of going to the game. You were at last week's game and you're going to this week's game at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium as well.
Yeah, it's just 10 years now for the Jags, or 10 games even, not 10 years. Brilliant just to have them in town. Brilliant to have the NFL in town. And every year it does feel more and more, I guess it obviously is a home game, but you've always historically seen all 32 jerseys. You see college jerseys. You see all sorts of stuff. You see some of the old NFL Europe jerseys. But it gradually feels more and more like a home game with a higher percentage of Jags jerseys and just really, really good atmosphere. Everybody's kind of really enjoying it. You can see there's a lot of newbies in the ground as well, kind of just maybe seeing their first or second games. And yeah, just a really, really good atmosphere, a lot of fun. You see seemingly pretty much everybody who's remotely famous in the UK decides to turn up, which is good to see as well. And all in all, just a really good atmosphere. And I think it's not often we had a real spell in the UK where we were getting these terrible games with two teams with losing records. Yeah. And this Saturday, we're going to see the Bills, one of the favorites for the Super Bowl, the Jags. That's just going to be incredible. And really looking forward to it.
And it'll be the first game we cover this year, Drew's Jags. Drew, a couple of people were commenting about your lack of enthusiasm for the NFL and the offense is not firing and stuff like that. And I'm sort of in the middle where I'm like, there's been a lot of really good games this year. There's also been a lot of blowouts. And I definitely think the margin of victory last year versus this year has definitely gotten a lot higher. So what do you put that down to? Is it just too small a sample to decide that at the moment?
Last week we had 7 teams that didn't score a touchdown. We have a handful of offenses here that just look completely lost. I don't even know what to say about the Giants. My card this week is full of hold your nose, bet on this terrible offense, and I don't feel great about it at all. I really don't know when we're going to get the inflection point where things start to look more fluid, things start to look more like I'm kind of used to seeing in regular season NFL, but we're definitely not there. The entire first 4 weeks of the season had a very preseason vibe to it. And I guess that's maybe just the world we live in now with the 17-game schedule and the fact that, the NFL is as flat as it is, particularly like in the AFC where, in any given week, any team can be kind of crowned as the best in the NFL. So, I think it's still, obviously, it's a long season. And I'm expecting we will ultimately get to the point where we see more fluid offenses. But, quarterbacks getting injured isn't helping. The new offensive coordinators not vibing with the quarterbacks isn't helping. And I think the name of the game is still really trying to kind of identify small factors that you can kind of tease into finding a team that's a bit underpriced. And hopefully I've threaded the needle this week.
Okay, looking forward to hearing some of your guys' thoughts. A lot of good winners put up last week. Texans money line for Sam, Texans -5.5 Judah, Rams money line Judah as well. Chargers Vikings. We did go 1 and 2 on the best bets, so we will. The guys are really working hard on picking that right selection from the winners that are going to be in there. Judah, you have no such problem here as well, so you're leading the way. Rams money line was just cruising in, and again, there has been, as I touched on with you, there has been a couple of really crazy games and crazy comebacks and teams record comebacks, and we nearly had another one there against the Rams.
Yeah, bit of an adventure, but Matthew Stafford coming through, hip injury and all. As they say, never in doubt.
Absolutely, always never in doubt. Cruised in there at the end with the touchdown, but the 4 games we're covering, as I touched on: London game, Jags at Bills, Chiefs at Vikings, Cowboys at Niners, and in between that, Texans at Falcons, just because we haven't really spoken about those 2 teams this year. And before we get going, if you are listening on the podcast, head over to our YouTube channel. The link is in the description. Hit that like button and comment your best bet of the weekend. Comment your best bet of the weekend, or if you're watching on YouTube, post live recording, comment your best bet and a chance to win a £50 free bet on Matchbook. T's and C's applies, but that link is in the description if you're listening now. Check that out. Comment your best bet or anything you want, and you'll be entering the draw to win a £50 free bet. We'll get going with the London game. Bills at the Jags, or Jags at the Bills. It is Jags home, but it is the Bills. We'll take a look at the betting that we currently have on matchbook.com. You can back Jags on the money line here, 3.25. The Bills are 1.43. Point spread on this game is 6 points. Bills laying the points there. The total for this is 48.5, and that's shaded. Well, that's 50-50 at the moment at 195 a piece. So, yeah, Sam, you touched on the game. This is the game London deserves after maybe 10, 12 years of not great games overall. But you're really looking forward to this game. It should be a cracker.
Yeah, it's going to be an absolute cracker. And I think, well, we saw what the Bills did last weekend, but the Jags were, I'd say, a bit of a mixed bag against the Falcons, in all honesty. There were some elements that were fantastic. I thought the defense kind of really looked good after a poor week in week 3. Josh Allen really got after Desmond Ridder, who by the way is absolutely an atrocious football player. But kind of the thing that really forces my hand into backing the Jags +6 here, and it's more of a lean than I'm not super set on it, but I just feel they've had a whole, well, it'll be over a week by the time the game actually starts. They are fully acclimatized. Trevor Lawrence is celebrating his, I think, 24th birthday over here. That I think just that basis of being in the UK for that long, just being able to settle into the time zone, there's no jet lag, and just feel more comfortable, more familiar with your surroundings. I think that's something that really, really cannot be overemphasized, how important that'll be. And I think that's probably worth a score in itself almost in terms of what it could do. So for me, as great as the Bills are, and I think they are a far better team than the Jags, I have to say the Jags +6 seems like the smartest thing to bet here for me.
Okay, yeah, and Drew, and look, you spotted this opportunity, I guess, in terms of home field advantage or the week extra in London at the start of the year. So sum it up for us. Like, the Bills were incredible against the Dolphins.
Yeah, and they're coming off of a 3-game stretch where their numbers look impossibly good, and I think regression's probably coming, not just because they have this huge travel disadvantage, but, this is a little bit of a tough matchup for them considering, they're coming into this game without Trey White now, who's out for the season with the torn Achilles. I think that matters against this Jags passing attack. I also think that, last week, the Bills looked completely unstoppable on offense, largely because the Dolphins elected to kind of not really give Stephon Diggs the attention he deserves. Tyson Campbell, on the other hand, is playing outstanding cornerback right now, and I think can match up quite well and neutralize Diggs. I think that makes the Bills play with a little bit of their hand tied behind their back on offense in this game. And if you can force Josh Allen into turnovers, we know we can kind of unravel things. I like the idea that the Jags, just in general, have a full kind of concentrated week to kind of practice and work on stuff. They're obviously not playing at their highest level at all. Even the 24-7 win last week against the Falcons, I thought, left a lot on the table. But they didn't even get to 23-7, excuse me. They didn't even make their team total last week, despite, playing a team that, was pretty one-dimensional, obviously. And I think a concentrated week of practice, sort of this home away from home where your players aren't distracted, all they have to do is prepare for this game, is probably going to set the Jaguars up for a relatively high, just in general, a high percentile performance, rather than just an average performance here. And the Bills, this is probably one of the most brutal things the NFL has ever done to any team: take away a home game and turn it into like an aggressive road game. I really just, I don't understand, what the rationale here was. But this is a pretty difficult test for the Bills. The fact that it is out to 6 is really what intrigues me here, even more than anything else. I think my neutral difference between these two teams is about 4 points. And then when you factor in the fact that there's a little bit of, bias in favor of the Jaguars with rest and travel, then, I'm pretty comfortable taking 6 here. So Jags +6 for me is the look. And I don't mind taking a little bit of money line as well, just in case you do bring out the worst in Josh Allen.
Okay, Jags +6. Sam, before we get to Judah, there is a good fan base from the Bills, so I'm expecting them to probably outnumber the Jags in Tottenham. Would that be your take heading into this game, maybe to switch that home field advantage a tad towards them?
Yeah, I think they will. And we've seen kind of previously when the Packers were here, was it last season or season 4? I can't remember. But when they came over, the whole of Tottenham was green. It was absolutely crazy. And I think the Bills, certainly a fan base that like to make themselves heard as well. So I think they'll be well seen, well heard. And I personally cannot wait to see somebody going through a table outside the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Sunday. That's going to be something I'm looking forward to. I think it's going to be a cracking atmosphere again. I really do. It's Wembley, as good as it is a stadium, it doesn't really compete with the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which is probably the best stadium in Europe, I think, in all honesty. So, yeah, really looking forward to that.
I guess I could add there's a lot that goes into home field advantage. If the crowd support is influencing the reffing, then maybe you do actually get a little bit of a bump for the Bills. If the crowd noise is so violent that it's disrupting pass protection assignments and Trevor Lawrence's communication at the line, then that could help the Bills, I guess. But I think the factor of just the fact that the Jags have been in London and adjusted now for a week compared to the Bills having to make this trip, is more of a key here. This is just a bad spot for the Bills. They just thumped their division rival, at home, and all week long I've been reading about how they're now the new Super Bowl favorites. Good luck traveling to London and getting up for a game against a team that's been spending all week concentrated prep for you.
Yeah, Judah, I guess the advantages for the Jags is very tangible. What we've seen, they're staying in London. They have that extra week, and you do like them here. Well, I'm guessing +6, but you're going to alt line it there as well for a long shot bet too.
Yeah, I think really what this comes down to is that I'd argue that we haven't actually learned anything new about either of these teams. I think the Jaguars, the fundamentals, we talked about this for a couple of weeks now. Trevor Lawrence is playing at a great rate. He's been let down by his receivers, the sort of variance that kind of evens out over the course of the season. I think the Bills have kind of had their 90th percentile games in recent weeks, but there's nothing new that's happened. The issues still remain. They still can't really generate quick pressure. Their secondary is hurting a bit. Yes, they got a bunch of turnovers against Sam Howell, and they played their best game of the year against the Dolphins. But all of that should be built in, right? We have a long kind of, the past 3 years have taught us what the Bills are. We know what this team is. And I think at the end of the day, the Jaguars last week kind of played 75% of their game. They knew they had it in hand. They had a 17-0 lead at halftime. They didn't have to unleash Trevor Lawrence, but we know that he's capable of putting together that game. And I kind of want to play that angle because the market's really, really clinging to the Bills, but we could absolutely see kind of a, quarterback duel sort of thing. And I am more than happy to kind of lay it with Trevor Lawrence, especially given the market's discount of him, though I think the fundamentals remain in place, that I kind of just love that alt angle. I do think the 6 for all of the reasons I'm mentioning now, and I think the mispriced home field advantage really does matter here. But I love this 2.5, basically betting on Trevor Lawrence to outplay Josh Allen. I think that's every bit in the cards.
Okay, yeah. So Jags -2.5 for Judah there, and long shot bet, and won't be his only one. He has another one in the best long shot section. And Jags +6. Sam and Drew are on board there, and they're riding that train. Really looking forward to that game, to be honest with you. London game. We will then move on to one of the 6 o'clock games here in the UK. It's the Texans at the Falcons. We picked this game just mainly because we haven't really spoken about these two teams, particularly the Texans, I think, over the last 4 weeks or so. The Texans are 2.14. Falcons 1.84 favorites. The point spread sees Texans get a 2-point head start, and the total is 42. So yeah, Judah, back at you. And thoughts on CJ Stroud? He's just taking everything in his stride. Excuse the slight pun there, but they've just so impressive last week, and you've been on them the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely was my biggest hit of the season, actually. Last week, taking the Texans. I think with CJ Stroud, the one thing that really stood out to me, and I posted this on Twitter, was that CJ Stroud is passing from a clean pocket at the lowest rate in the NFL. That kind of makes sense when you're playing with, third and fourth string offensive linemen as they have. But in the rare times that he has been throwing from a clean pocket, he's been the best quarterback in the NFL. That's certainly striking and not something I anticipated seeing. And I kind of saw 2 kind of narratives clashing. Just one, this is especially last week, you kind of the Steelers defensive line will kind of overwhelm this Houston offensive line, but also every week CJ Stroud was kind of putting himself in cleaner pockets, getting rid of the ball quicker. And I think that's kind of a testament a lot to the offensive coaching, and kind of the way of mitigating that offensive line. And I see no reason kind of why that shouldn't continue. The Falcons are pretty good on the interior, but at edge, Bud Dupree, I don't think, is turning back the clock 4 or 5 years. And I think we will see Tytus Howard and Laramie Tunsil back for the Texans to really solidify that line. But ultimately what this comes down to, I think, is that there's a lot of hesitation to kind of bump up the Texans. And I think Nico Collins is a legit, he's playing like a top 5 receiver. I don't know if he will continue that. But he's a legit number 1 NFL receiver. Tank Dell has been terrific in the number 2 role. And I kind of just trust this offensive coaching staff. I think the Falcons are a very beatable matchup. AJ Terrell is a terrific corner. They've got kind of weak links elsewhere in the secondary. Jesse Bates is fine at safety, but I don't see this as an intimidating offense at all. And the Texans defense has been generating a ton of pressure, and that's almost a death wish for Desmond Ridder. I mean, if you have to drop back to pass at all, Ritter's going to make mistakes. I mean, we can't emphasize enough just how bad this Falcons offense has been. If you look at it from like a market expectations, the Falcons have scored way fewer points than their team total, essentially. I think it's like 45 points in total. The market, I don't think, is kind of making the adjustment between Marcus Mariota from last year, as crazy as that sounds, to Desmond Ridder this year. I think, like, if we just take ourselves back, and maybe I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, like this was a 4.5 win team coming into last season. And I think Marcus Mariota surprised some people. He was in the top half of the league in EPA. It's a huge, huge, huge downgrade to go to Desmond Ridder. And I think the prices actually should be more reflective of last season than this season. And I see every buy signal for the Texans that I really, really like this bet.
Okay, Drew, you fundamentally disagree with everything Judah just said. I'm taken, given that you're going for the Falcons here.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, Judah's points are all fair. CJ Stroud is a hit. There's no question about that. But I will kind of point out that the last 2 weeks where he's looked especially strong, he's been playing with a very positive, very advantageous game state. And the first 2 weeks of the year where they were playing with a deficit, it was a very different, just sort of level of comfort. And last week's outcome was pretty incredible. I mean, if you go all credit in the world, Judah, he hit absolutely killer, 300 plus yard combined with a comfortable Texans win. Like that was an exactly perfectly correlated way that game could play out. And, there are lots of whiffs of this Bobby Slowick offense of the same sort of stuff I used to bang my head against the wall with Kyle Shanahan, where it's like, they just lost Trent Williams. He's a Hall of Fame tackle. How in the world is this not mattering? Like, I don't understand how it's not mattering. And there was a lot of that last week, and really the last 2 weeks, where you just haven't seen the cluster injury of the offensive line for the Texans matter. They lose another guard. I don't know that Howard and particularly Tunsil will be back at 100% this week. So I think there are still some questions about how the offensive line will protect. I like the Falcons D line as sort of the strength. And, in general, I like just the way that the defense is playing overall for the Falcons so far. And I think this is stupid to say maybe because it's only an 8-game sample, but Desmond Ridder has been a lot less problematic at home than he has been on the road. He might be just at that stage of his career where he's more comfortable playing in Atlanta than he is taking his show on the road. He certainly did not look like he was ready for a standalone game in London last week, but back at home now and potentially in the potential for this being a game state where the Falcons can, generate a lead with the rushing attack and then kind of hold on to it, I think is a very real outcome here. So, I do see a little bit of an overreaction potentially on how bad people think Ridder is after 2 road games. And I do think there is potentially a little bit of people thinking CJ Stroud is a lot better than he is after 2 games where he was playing with a positive game state. And I also think that the Texans have been adjusted by the market, right? Like this was a team that was 3-point dogs to the Steelers last week at home. And now they're, at times, or at least when I bet into this, they were around to pick them on the road. And that reflects, I think, a bigger adjustment in the positive direction for the Texans than the negative direction for the Falcons. Ultimately, is the coaching staff in Houston good enough and is CJ Stroud good enough to keep the Texans in the discussion for a playoff spot or even an AFC South title? Absolutely. And in fact, if you like the Texans this week, I think betting them to win the AFC South is maybe even a better bet than betting them on the money line at the current price, just because, even though we like the Jags, they're 6-point dogs. Like they're probably going to lose. Even though that, the Colts and the Titans they're playing each other. One of those teams is going to lose. So like, if you think the Texans are going to win this week, you're almost better off swinging for something with a little higher payout here. And, there is a potential that CJ Stroud has a comeback in him, and we just haven't seen it. There's a potential that the Texans can play from ahead in this game, and the Falcons are dead in the water because, at a deficit, I don't trust Desmond Ridder to throw their way back into a game. They're not even really trying to throw their way back in the game. They're going to continue to lean on the running attack because that's all that's working there. So, I think I definitely respect that there is a lot of game outcomes here where the Texans win, and it's, the Falcons were wildly overrated coming into the season, and the first 2 wins kind of threw people off the scent. But I think with Ridder back at home and a Texans team that's coming off of a pretty aggressive market adjustment to the good, I don't mind betting against that adjustment and thinking that it was maybe a little bit premature or a little bit situationally driven. That the Texans are all of a sudden now kind of a neutral or an average team by rating. So for me, it's the Falcons or pass here.
Before I bring Sam in here, because he's playing a total, a final word to you there, Judah, just on potentially Desmond Ridder. Is he a different quarterback at home potentially, and will that maybe swing it towards the Falcons at all for you?
I would tend to say a small sample, but Drew, I have to say, if we look at the team ratings, I'm seeing, if we take a look at headlines and this week's spread, I'm still seeing the Texans as the 6th worst team in football. The Falcons are at like 11th or 12th. That's why I don't think they've kind of been meaningfully upgraded enough. But to your question, I'm willing to say we don't have a big enough sample. It's probably, opponent driven. But that's the sort of spot where if we see it live, he looks more comfortable. He's not kind of abandoning clean pockets. That's a spot where I would maybe take off some of my position and bet the Falcons.
Okay, yeah. Never stay too stubborn in your ways. If you see something in front of your eyes, maybe perhaps change. And you were criticizing Desmond Ridder there, Sam, like everyone else, in fairness. You are playing an over here, so give us a little bit of something to go on for the Falcons offense here.
Yeah, it is simply just about that ground game for me. I think they must realize in the Falcons building what they have with Desmond Ridder. They must know. They must know. And they must also see that when they actually pound the rock, it actually is effective. I think we've seen a real kind of shift through the first weeks. We obviously knew Bijan would be the man at some point, but he was obviously out-snapped in week 1 by Tyler Algier. Then he led the backfield 19-16 in week 2, 10-7 in week 3, and last week kind of finally sort of took the keys to the offense with a 14-17 carry ratio in comparison with Algier. I think that has to continue. He has to take even more of it now. He's averaged 6 yards per carry this season, and the Texans defense, it's fairly middle of the road in terms of defending the run, allowing 116.5 rushing yards per game. But I think the Falcons really they have to make that their identity at this point, I think, at least until they can kind of make a QB upgrade. So in that sense, I actually think the Falcons will put on a fair few points here. But my kind of real confidence is more in the Texans just doing what they seem to have done so well, which is exceed expectations week in, week out this season. CJ Stroud, just to kind of echo what's been said, looks the real deal. I think this guy's going to be a guy we're talking about for a decade at least. He's absolutely incredible. The connection with Nico Collins, fantastic. CJ Stroud, particularly under pressure, is just playing out of his skin. And I think no matter how good that Falcons defense is, and they are one of definitely a top 10 defense in the league, I'd say I don't think they're going to be able to face Stroud. So I think the Texans probably will win, but I'm more confident in the total. And I think we're going to see a fairly high scoring game. We're going to see the Texans do well in the air, and we're going to see the Falcons do well on the ground.
Okay, yeah. So that over 41.5 locked in for Sam, and Drew's going for the Falcons with Judah on Texans on the money line. Fascinating game now. I'm all of a sudden really intrigued by that 6 o'clock kickoff, to be honest with you guys. So I think you've done your job.
I'm just going to put a flag. This is going to be the David Dotta game.
There you go. Drew. We'll clip that up for you for a nice social piece there to maybe just that image of you putting the flag out there where you are in Northern California. We will move on to Chiefs at Vikings, which is another intriguing game here. We got the Chiefs at 151, the Vikings 2-8 on the money line. The point spread sees the Chiefs laying 4 points. That's just moved from 5 in the last hour or so, and the points total is 53. We are recording this on Wednesday afternoon UK time. So yeah, Drew, take it away on your thoughts here, and a little bit on the Chiefs in prime time there over the the weekend. Wasn't a Sunday night. Yeah, I caught the highlights on YouTube, and a lot of people were on the Chiefs, and Mahomes took that knee. I guess for you, look, it was ultimately the right play from a 100% guarantee a win versus maybe a 98, 99%.
Yeah, that was like a 5th percentile Mahomes performance, and they sort of covered. Like that to me is why it's surprising that people are so ready to go bet against this Chiefs team. I get it. The Vikings have an offense that can score. That's the rubric for backing a team against the Chiefs. Can you score? And the Vikings can probably neutralize the Chiefs. The one kind of bright spot, at least on the Chiefs pass rush, and Chris Jones with a little bit of innovative scheming, I would guess. But to me, at least, the Vikings defense here for the Chiefs is like, this looks like hot knife through butter. I really have no idea how the Vikings are getting off the field when they're out there on defense. And yes, there's been some chemistry issues between Mahomes and his wide receiving core. But we have yet to even really see the good plays. And I don't know that the Chiefs are going to pull out the good plays in this game. They may not have to. They may be able to continue to lean on, Isaiah Pacheco, but they have a really balanced attack right now. That's just, it's just efficient and fine when they're not turning over the ball. And I don't see enough bright spots in the Vikings defense, even after they played, I guess what I would say is I'm not giving the Vikings credit for what they did against the Panthers. I think the Panthers are a joke in terms of scheme, in terms of quarterback play. Like I can't in good conscience tell you that the Vikings ought to be upgraded defensively after that, which means the Chiefs are going to score as many points as they feel like here, which means expecting that the Vikings are going to cover any kind of number is, you're going to be living a dangerous life on Sunday. And, I think every bet in the NFL, you're living a dangerous life. So maybe that's a pointless comment, but, I get why people would be interested in backing a Vikings team here that has an offense that can go score for score potentially. But nothing about this Vikings defense spells confidence that they're going to keep the Chiefs out of the 30s.
Okay, yes, so Drew playing the over. Over to you, Sam, on this. And no official bet for you, but just give us a little bit of what your sort of thoughts are heading into this game. Both these teams won last week, but again, as Drew alluded to, there are a lot of people have question marks over that Chiefs, despite winning and possibly covering if Mahomes went over for that touchdown.
Yeah, for me, I can't bet on this because I think when it comes to my evaluation of teams, I find these two of the hardest teams in the entire league to work out exactly what I think. Because, I mean, we talk about the Vikings. I think I actually called their result right last week, but I still, they could be anything on any given Sunday. And I know you can argue that for any team, but I'd say the Vikings really are so unpredictable. We've seen them sort of get beaten by a relatively poor Bucs team, but then actually do pretty well against a good Eagles team, be within a score of the Chargers. And then there's the Chiefs, who, for me, I still think they're the best team in football, but they have let me down this year. And I think there's a number of reasons for that, but I just don't feel comfortable backing them right now, especially after beating the Jets by just 3 points. I've never been so sure of a best bet in my life. I was devastated. And I think this one is just going to be one of those games that's really fun. So for me, this is a watching brief. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to enjoy the game, potentially get in play if there's any reason to. But I think ultimately, I find both of these quite hard to work out. So I just need to stay away, I think.
Okay, yeah. And I know, Judah, you're in a similar boat there. And Drew alluded to Mahomes being a bit off with his wide receivers. It was rare to see Kelsey and Mahomes also seem to be a bit off with each other. But you're looking for live betting angles. So just talk to us a little bit about your thoughts heading into this.
Yeah, Sam, I'm going to have to disagree with you a bit here. I actually think these are two of the most predictable teams in the NFL. I think we actually know a ton about the Vikings. They're going to have a really good offense, probably score somewhere between the 20s and 30s, and their defense is not particularly good. And I kind of want to capitalize on exactly that. I think the Chiefs are going to score. They always do. The defense was really, really good the first couple of weeks. I mean, Zach Wilson had a career game, whether Zach Wilson, the defense, I'm not really interested in kind of dividing up the credit there. But I kind of see this as the type of game where each team's going to score, and I kind of want to just capture that live. And I think that when teams are scoring and we're going to have some kind of like, someone's going to go up, 10-3, 13-3, whatever it is, early in the game, and we know that each offense is capable of scoring, I think we're just going to be able to get a more advantageous line at a certain point in a game and kind of just like trying to pinpoint like where do I think that, where's my best price? Like, I think the Vikings are going to come back. When 13-3 in the line, 7.5, I want to take the Vikings. If the Chiefs go down, I'm going to want to take them on the money line, that sort of thing. And I think we'll be able to get a better spot live just because of how good these offenses are and kind of just trying to manipulate that sort of like in-game volatility. I think you gotta the Chiefs keep games way too close. This has been ever since they won the Super Bowl, teams are against the spread terrific against them. They can't cover big margins. The Vikings are always in one-score games. I kind of just see this as like it's going to come down to the last drive in the fourth quarter. So I'm going to stay off pregame, but I am going to try and attack this spot live.
Yeah, Drew, there, you wanted to come in?
Yeah. You know what the right bet is? It has nothing to do with this game. It's Mahomes MVP. He's going to throw 5 touchdown passes in this game, probably. He has 6 games remaining against atrocious defenses in the AFC West. And Josh Allen's due for another 3-pick performance any day now. So especially if you already put a little Josh Allen in pocket before that Miami game and you've seen him come to the top of the market, you better protect that position with your life, because he's going to continue to turn the ball over, as the season goes on. It's just in his DNA, in my opinion. And so I think that will be held against him. And I think this is probably as good of a buy low you're going to get on Mahomes MVP as we're going to have all season, considering I think he's going to shred these guys. So Chiefs team total over is a fun bet as an alternative, but I think now is probably the buy time on Mahomes MVP.
Okay, number of different angles to attack that game, but ultimately we will move on to Sunday Night Football, which is probably game of the weekend here, proper order, given it is on Sunday Night Football. Cowboys at the 49ers. Cowboys current 2.62 underdogs on the Matchbook betting exchange. The Niners are 1.56. The point spread sees Cowboys get a 3.5 head start, and the total for this is 44.5. So yeah, Judah, we'll go back to you on this one. Look, these are probably the two of maybe the best 3 or 4 teams in the NFC.
Yeah, this one's really hard for me because we talk about the Bills, and I was saying how they've kind of had that like 90th percentile outcome where they've just absolutely dominated teams. I think we've actually seen a little bit of like a shift of the curve for the Niners. They're putting up some of the best numbers, at least by my metrics, since I started counting. Actually, their performance last week on a drive-by-drive basis was the best regular season performance of the last 13 years, or since I started tracking data. Only the Bills' wild card performance against the Patriots was more efficient on a per drive basis, and that I think kind of like has me towards the Niners. But I also have in the back of my mind this like Brock Purdy is going to have one of these sort of like 2 to 3 interception type games. Like he's at an unsustainable rate of kind of the turnover worthy plays, or the it kind of throws where a defender drops it, or generally just bad plays that have not actually turned into interceptions or fumbles. And that's eventually going to happen. And I think it's not even just like regression to the mean is going to happen. The Cowboys are exactly the type of team to take advantage of that, right? They have a ferocious pass rush. They have a very aggressive defense, maybe a little less so with Trayvon Diggs, but they're the type of team who is going to pounce on turnovers. It's not a coincidence that we've seen kind of the game they had against the Giants. They have like 2 or 3 of these games every year where they really, really take advantage of kind of teams and their turnovers. By contrast, I think the Cowboys, like no one really has a good pulse on them. Their passing offense, they've just been in such weird game scripts as it is, either being very far down against the Cardinals for most of the game, or being way ahead, that we don't actually know how they play kind of in the like 60-40 type game, which is how I think this one sets up. But like, I'm kind of not comfortable betting this and recognizing that like there's way too much we don't know. Maybe I'll attack it live if I see something there, but the Niners, they're a house right now, but the Brock Purdy implosion game is coming at some point. Maybe that's my kind of hammer. We can, if it happens this week, that'll be a nice little sound bite. But I can't bet this one given what we know about the teams right now.
You got me thinking about Brock Purdy and that potential meltdown. I didn't see that coming personally myself. Sam, make the case for the Niners here. Christian McCaffrey, incredible, 4 touchdowns, and he set a franchise record for 13 consecutive games with a touchdown. I know potentially they weren't up against the best defense in the world, but they looked so impressive on Sunday.
Yeah, they really did. And I think kind of we spoke about them sort of coming into the season, didn't we? Saying that we I think me and Drew weren't too sure how long it would take them to kind of really hit, first gear, top gear even. And it certainly hasn't taken them long. They've been absolutely incredible so far this season. But for me, I'm taking the Niners minus 3.5 points, and this is less about kind of the Niners particularly and more about the Cowboys in that. Yeah, they have had a couple of incredible performances, but I think when you look at their points, look at last week, for example, 14 of those points have come from their defense. And I don't think that's sustainable. And I don't think that's sustainable against an offense quite as good as the 49ers. Ultimately, this is a team that they dunked on Aaron Donald. They dunked on TJ Watt. They've got 31.3 points per game. They've dunked on everybody. And I think that defense, Cowboys defense, as good as it is the best defense in football, maybe top 3. They simply won't be able to kind of do what they've done against the Niners. What they've done against other teams to the Niners. So for me, it's more about that. I just think this is a really good defense, but they're going to struggle against such a good offense. And it's unlike anything they've seen so far this season or they've been matched up against. So for me, that 3.5 points, I think that is an absolute smash, to be honest. I think it started at 4.5. I think we're going to see it go out that way again, go slightly bigger as the weekend comes closer. But for me, I think this is incredible bet. 3.5 points. Yes, please.
Okay, just as Sam's alluding to there, it is above evens 3.5, so could eventually get down to 3 before the weekend. So Drew, I'll throw an MVP candidate at you. They were talking about it on the coverage. Christian McCaffrey hasn't been a quarterback that hasn't won the MVP since 2012, I think. So there's one for you.
I'll give him 0%. If anyone out there wants a Christian McCaffrey MVP bet, I'll write it, no problem. I'll give you best price on market. No, in seriousness, this is a really, really fun matchup. Obviously, the familiarity between Dan Quinn, the Cowboys coordinator, and Shanahan is probably at the top of the list of fun angles to really pick through. The fact that the Cowboys season ended at the hands of the 49ers 2 seasons in a row gives this one some extra juice. Judah's I like Judah's point quite a lot, which is you don't really know what the Cowboys are in a neutral game because they haven't been in one yet. But I do think there is some signal in how the Cowboys are scripting some of their offense and how they just what do they want to be under Mike McCarthy, and it's a high efficiency, shorter passing, ball out of the hand quickly, decent balance between run and pass. And it's the type of offense that I think is low risk enough that it should have success against this Niners defense. The Niners defense has taken a modicum of a step backwards this year. I'm not exactly sure why. Like, their pass rush is still amazing. They're getting incredible play, particularly out of their interior D-line, Hargrave and Kinlaw. Who would have believed he would come back from the dead? Like, these guys are playing really. Drake Jackson's playing well. Nick Bosa is still amazing. Like, their defensive line is incredible, but I do think the Cowboys O-line, and I'm crossing my fingers that they're not, there's not a surprise injury coming, but they have enough absolute tier 1 pass protectors that are going to be available that I think they can neutralize the pass rush for the Niners. And just the fact that Dak's getting the ball out of his hands more quickly this season, I think, is a good sign. And I think a little bit of a conservative offense here for the Cowboys is going to help them sustain offensive success. And then on the other side of the ball, this looks like a nightmare matchup for the Cowboys defense against the Niners in terms of just speed and getting players in space. The Cowboys defense struggled mightily with that against the Arizona Cardinals. I think the Cardinals put together kind of the perfect blueprint of how you want to attack the Cowboys in that game. And I know the Cowboys were figuring some stuff out in the absence of Trevon Diggs, and they maybe have kind of solved some stuff. If you want to lean into the way they looked last week against the Patriots, that's fine. But I do not buy any of the success they had against the Patriots, who are one of these slower teams in the league and one of the least able to, take advantage of space and speed. They're at the absolute polar opposite end of the spectrum in terms of offensive composition, in terms of skill position players, as the Niners. And so this is a huge step up in class in terms of who you're facing in an offense for the Cowboys. And I think the Cowboys defense could get a little bit exposed here. Now, I don't have enough confidence to lay 3.5 with the Niners. My fair is actually right at 3. So if I was going to take a side, I would take the 3.5 with the Cowboys. But I think that 3.5 comes with the expectation that the Cowboys are scoring into the 20s here, which makes over 44.5 a pretty enticing bet. So over 44.5 would be the only bet I could have in this market.
Okay, over 44.5 for Drew. Sam, Niners minus 3.5, just above even money there. And before we get to any other bets, insights.matchbook.com, full recap of all the bets put up here. It's a great way before Red Zone to check in on the guys, see what bets they're putting up, potentially do your own Red Zone accumulator on the Matchbook betting exchange, and our markets will get really liquid right up to kickoff. So the best time to bet with us will be particularly after that 5 p.m. in that hour before Red Zone kicks off. We'll go to any other bets. We'll go with Sam. You've got 2 selections. So we've got, I think, 6 any other bets in total here. Sam, you've got 2 of them. So take it away, starting with Eagles at the Rams, which, to be honest, we should have made our top 4 if we didn't want to talk about the Texans. This is a fascinating game. Like, Eagles 4-0, but there are a few question marks just by the style isn't matching what last season's regular season performances were.
Yeah, and I think this comes down for me that I don't think either of these defenses are kind of at the level that we've seen from them in previous years, whilst the offenses are still pretty effective. So the total's 50.5. I'm taking the over. Eagles 10th in defensive DVOA. And there's been some really, really impressive moments from them, but ultimately, this game just stinks of a shootout to me. I think Kupp could be back. I don't know how effective he's going to be, if he is sort of still nursing any kind of lingering effects of this injury. But ultimately, with Nakua on the scene, do they even need him back sort of that urgently? So they might kind of let him just heal up and get 100% right. But for me, yeah, this just is going to be a high scoring game. 50.5 is fairly high total. I think it's second or third highest of the week, but I still do quite like hitting the over on it. And my next one is obviously a divisional game, Titans at Colts. Titans 2-point underdogs, but I do like them, so I'll take the 2 points. Been really impressed by them defensively at times this season. I think Mike Vrabel knows how to kind of cook up something interesting on defense, and ultimately playing a rookie quarterback, albeit one who has shown a lot of really kind of potentially quite special play. But I think he's going to scheme something up here that's going to really kind of limit Richardson's abilities to kind of either kind of get out in space or whatever. So I think this is a team that last week, I think they actually looked like they're kind of finding their feet a little, and there's still a lot of talent kind of on offense in this team. And I think we're going to gradually see them improve in the next couple of weeks. But I find the Colts another team that's quite tough to call, but I think the Titans should have enough here just to kind of grind out a bit of an attritional victory and, well, at least cover with the 2 points.
Okay, Titans and the over in the Eagles at Rams for Sam. Judah, you have one selection here in the any other bet section, and it's the Saints money line at the Patriots. And again, we touched on the Patriots game against Cowboys, and we were sort of talking about this from a live betting point of view. If the Cowboys do get a touchdown up, it could be curtains for the Patriots, and it ultimately was.
Yeah, I mean, feels real ugly to back Derek Carr, Pete Carmichael, and the Saints. It's been a bit of a rough ride, but I think I'm going to have to go with the Saints here. I think I talk a lot about man coverage versus zone coverage, and in man coverage, the number one, the targets are more predictable, so you know where the ball is going to go, and also it's much more so a matchup of wide receivers are better than corners. The wide receivers are going to win. The corners are better than the wide receivers. Then they're going to win, and that's kind of the angle we played last week. Both of these teams play a ton of man coverage. The Patriots do not have the personnel to guard Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, and Chris Olave, especially with Christian Gonzalez, who, as of an hour ago, is out for the season with a torn labrum. The Saints do pass. They haven't passed downfield. I'm a little bit worried about Carr's health. Frankly, I'd love this bet if Jameis Winston was playing at quarterback, but I don't see a way in which the Patriots can kind of cover these Saints receivers. And also on the flip side, Mac Jones has the worst in terms of expected points added, essentially like a better way of framing yards per attempt. He's been the worst in the league against man coverage. I think this is a product of his wide receivers. Devontae Parker is the worst separator by my metrics. They really do not have the talent on the outside, and the Saints play a ton of man coverage on defense that I expect Jones to continue to struggle as he has for a couple of years now since the talent's been a little weak. I gotta take the Saints here. Everything's kind of pointing to a little bit of a bounce back spot, and they're underdogs. The Patriots, frankly, have not really done anything. They maybe put together a solid performance on the backs of some blocked field goals against the Dolphins, but there's been nothing really to buy at all. And I'm kind of trying to low point the Saints here, especially given the matchup Bengals.
Yeah, a few question marks over Bill Belichick for the first time, I'd say, in his career, at least post Tom Brady era. Drew, for you, 3 selections. I want to start with the Bengals or the Cardinals, and then you can go to the other 2, just because of the Joe Burrow situation, injury situation. I feel like you were one of the first people to go, he shouldn't be playing. Give him the few weeks off. I feel everything I listen to now, NFL-wise, is telling me we need to rest Joe Burrow for a few weeks. So I think you were ahead of that game. If you want some props from me, you get it.
Thank you. The Bill Belichick rubric, by the way, is easy. Is he playing Zach Wilson? Then back him. If he's not, then don't. But no, the Bengals and Cardinals. This is. I mean, somebody bet this up pretty aggressively. They know that something's different about this game and the Bengals than what we've seen in the last handful of weeks. And okay, good luck. It looks like kind of the tape is out on how you go about defending this Bengals team. And I appreciate what Jonathan Gannon has done in the Cardinals so far in terms of getting his team prepared, well coached, and just in position to be competitive. And I expect that they can keep the Bengals in check, much like the Titans did. Maybe not to 3 points necessarily, but definitely under 20. So Bengals are kind of an auto under until they something about just, I guess. But yeah, I don't really know what the long-term vision here is, and I think the Bengals are getting pretty close to seeing their season lost, although nobody in the AFC North is really running away from them, except for maybe the Ravens, although the Ravens are dealing with some stuff. So I think Bengals under is kind of an auto fire for me every week.
Okay, brilliant. And you have 2 more picks here. The Titans at the Colts. You're playing the over, and then they're laying the points to the Broncos.
Yeah, Colts over is an auto fire for me every week, especially if you're going to give me 42 and a half. The Colts defense, man. They weren't good. We knew that, and now they're missing some important pieces. Kwity Paye was their best pass rusher, not expecting him to go. Flowers out matters. He was doing some decent job in coverage, and the Titans' offense actually a lot more spunky than I gave them credit for. I thought the issues that they had at their offensive line were going to matter, but Tannehill has overcome them already in this, to this point in the season, and I think I have confidence in Shane Steichen. I love the aggressiveness, at least how quickly he's playing. I love the explosive plays that Anthony Richardson is coming up with, even if they're not all time. If he's not breaking efficiency records, I don't really care. Explosiveness is good for an over. So over 42 and a half is a fun one. And then, yeah, you really hold my nose here and playing this Broncos team against the Jets. The Broncos have been miserable this year. I'm very much counting on Justin Simmons coming back in this game. He was questionable, missed a lot of practice last week, ultimately did not suit up. I think if he is out there, I think this Broncos defense is an entirely different handicap, particularly going up against the Jets team and the Jets offense that's coming off of a career performance by Zach Wilson. I mean, maybe that's the new Zach Wilson. Maybe he'll, find things easy against this Broncos defense the way a lot of other quarterbacks have this season. But I don't mind laying the points with the Broncos because I think that their offense now is somewhat well understood, and I think it actually matches up pretty well against the Jets defense. So I think the Broncos can get a win and a cover here against a Jets team that looks ready to kind of make some mistakes.
Okay, yeah, and I do feel after Zach Wilson's performance in primetime that the Jets will be bet by a number of people, and one of those people will be Sam Farley. So Sam, make the case against Drew here.
I hate myself. I truly hate myself. I thought they were quite impressive, to be honest with you, against the Chiefs. And I think this is, again, Zach Wilson. I think he's absolutely terrible. He's not long for this starting job. But ultimately, aside from the quarterback position, I think they're pretty much the superior team across the field. And for me, just in that regard, I just don't trust the Broncos. And I feel like Sean Payton, I think he's lost the locker room already. They don't seem to really be. Well, I suppose they played for him a bit at the weekend, but I don't think they're truly kind of enjoying the experience of being in his presence. I don't think he's a leader of men, at least with them. And ultimately, like I said, I think the Jets are just a better team in all but one position. So I think they'll kind of do enough the defense will do enough anyway to cause Russell Wilson problems and get the win here. But I think ultimately this is one of those games that I think it's just going to be a lot of fun with the sort of Hackett comments a couple of months back. I think that team is going to be fired up to kind of go out there and show up for their OC. So yeah, really looking forward to watching this, bizarrely for two teams that are quite horrible to watch on offense at times. Yeah, I think the Jets will just about have enough to win.
Yeah, fascinating game there, to be fair. I feel Sean Payton reminded me a little bit of Jose Mourinho towards the end of his career. If you only anyone big fan of football or soccer, they know the reference I'm getting at there. Judah, we're going to go to you, and this is an Eagles Rams there. Let me just find it. Sorry, you're going alt line here. Rams covering -5.5. The Rams have been very impressive. If they didn't have such a everyone's buy low point to them in the preseason, I think people would be talking about them even more as a playoff team and beyond. So yeah, how impressive have you been with the Rams so far?
Yeah, I feel like I'm a broken record saying this because I kind of after week 3, I was really willing to just buy in and say this is a lot more of the 2021 version than the 2022. When the market's kind of pressing in this 2022 version. And I feel like I'm a broken record, but I'll say it again. The same reason why I was back on the Rams last week is I want to attack teams in which Matthew Stafford I think has a bit of an advantage, and I think the Eagles have a terrific pass rush on paper. That's great. Their pressure has not really shown up at all this year. They're 19th in pressure rate, 17th in quick pressure rate. Their secondary has been an absolute disaster. Josh Jobe is maybe the worst cornerback in football so far this year. They've moved James Bradbury to the slot. He hasn't been as effective. Darius Slay is real. He has not been great. They changed defensive coordinators, obviously losing Jonathan Gannon to Arizona. And I really just want to attack the Rams here. I think the Eagles have not been tested. They have not played in a game in which they fall behind. It would be a bonus if Cooper Kupp comes back, but Puka Nacua has been absolutely terrific. Tutu Atwell's also been great. I see no reason why those two shouldn't sustain that play. The Rams are a top 10 offense by my numbers. I kind of want to. I'm happy to lay the points, especially if we can. We don't have a large sample of the Eagles playing from behind, but the sample that we do have over the last couple of years has been dreadful. Jalen Hurts has one of the worst expected points added of any quarterback when trailing. And I think the Eagles have done nothing to impress through the first 4 weeks. Granted, the expectations are pretty high. And I think the Rams have not yet been priced as this top 10 offense. And Matthew Stafford's absolutely slinging again. And I don't see a reason why that shouldn't continue. We've kind of seen this game before with McVay and Stafford, or McVay and Goff. And I'm fully, ready to lean in and buy it.
Okay, Rams -5.5. Love the confidence, Judah. I think I saw in the Matchbook betting exchange they were over 500 preseason for the Super Bowl, and they're into 85.0 now. It just shows you how far they come, but how far they need to go if they're anywhere near that talk for sure. Drew, you're on underdog of the week here, and you were hit the crossbar with the Commanders with the Eagles. I thought they should have gone for 2. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Oh my God, I don't even want to get into that. Ron Rivera, man, get out of the league. Like he's going anyway. Like he might as well take some chances on his way out. I had no idea why he would leave that.
But just very quickly on that, Drew, because it's a popular thing that happens. You're 1 point down. It's going to go to overtime if you kick the extra point. How much of a decision is it to go for 2? Is it so obvious for you?
Third grade math should tell you this. Yeah. Like did you watch a live money line when they trot out the kicking unit? Like literally, they lost equity in terms of win probability in that second, in real time. Like it was an absolutely inexcusable decision. 9-point underdogs on the road, and you're taking your chances in overtime. Get out of here. That was frustrating. They should have won. All that said, I would have made the Jags my dog of the week, but we already covered them. So I'm going to go in a different direction here. Anytime you can bet on Matt Canada against Mike McDonald, you had to do it. So it's going to be the Steelers for me. And I think there's some interesting stuff going on with the Steelers. Like it's pretty clear that they're like a pass funnel now, which I didn't expect in the absence of Cam Hayward, because so much of the signal of him being absent was that all of a sudden the run defense had some cracks, and I thought teams were going to be able to find some success against them on the ground. But their secondary is pretty miserable, and I don't really see the Ravens being able to take advantage of that, considering the injuries that they've sustained to this point. Yes, Zay Flowers looks like a hit in the draft, but I don't really see enough out of the passing attack from the Ravens that says that they are going to be able to hurt the Steelers the way that the mighty Texans did. And then on the flip side, I'm hoping that it's Trubisky and not an injured Kenny Pickett. If this is an injured Kenny Pickett that trots out there, I'm going to go ahead and grade this as a loss in the ledger before it even kicks off. But I think Trubisky is probably an upgrade over the quality of play you're getting out of Pickett so far this season. I don't exactly know why Pickett has regressed so violently. I know that a lot of people kind of correctly pointed out that some of his success, particularly in the end of last year, was on unsustainable year-over-year stuff that's just not sticky. And so maybe this was just entirely expected. But whatever the case is, I think Trubisky has a lot higher floor here. I think the Steelers defense can definitely generate a little bit of pass rush and neutralize some of the incredible rushing attack that Lamar Jackson in particular brings into this game. They have always kind of matched up fairly well against the Ravens. These have always been relatively tightly contested games, even when one team has been, sort of well off of their peak, which the Steelers are right now. So probably the last bet I'm going to make on the Steelers this season if it doesn't come through. But I like them plus the points and taking a little money line as well.
Okay, you've said that on record now, Drew, so I'll be scouring that sheet for the next few weeks, making sure Steelers, Control F Steelers, see if that came up, or PIT as you put it.
Yeah, I'm close to my maximum units lost threshold on this lousy team.
Yeah, there should be limits. That's actually a good way. You should set up your account where you're limited on what you can lose on one team. But anyway, I digress. Great records on the long shots there, and particularly last week, nearly went 3-0. So we'll move on to best bets. Drew, you are taking on Judah and the Rams. It's a theme of the season. You're just taking on whatever Judah says. You just say, great points, Judah, but I'm going to stretch.
Yeah, I got to keep up my streak of just absolutely atrocious best bet of the week picks here, and go against Judah as the Rams win by margin here. No, I think the confidence in the Eagles is not about what we've seen from them so far this season. It's much more about specifically, I guess really two factors. One, I think the injury to Stafford, the hip injury he sustained in the Colts game, that's the kind of injury that really prevents you from getting your normal routine in terms of reps throughout the week. I know that they're saying he's going to practice. He probably is going to be, limited or full participant in practice all week, but I still believe that there is some impact that happens from that type of hip injury. The key matchup here that I especially love is this Eagles D-line against the Rams offensive line. Going back specifically to the Monday Night Football game against the Bengals, which the Rams should have won, the second half of that game was entirely dictated by the pass rush for the Bengals being able to find creative ways to just be in Stafford's lap on every drop back. And I think the Eagles can set themselves up fairly well into, to kind of getting to that game state. Judah's points was especially fair in that if this is Eagles trying to come back, all of a sudden I'm feeling pretty miserable during this game, hoping for the Eagles to get a cover, because they definitely are not a team that has especially high likelihood of closing deficits. But that said, I like their offense against the Rams matchup. Two hats on Aaron Donald. Otherwise, you do a nice job of protecting Jalen Hurts in this situation, and I think you can pick apart this Rams pass defense down the field. To AJ Brown having a little bit of a breakout week last week, I think is a pretty positive sign, and I would expect that just in general, the Eagles offense can put some scoreboard pressure on the Rams in this one, and then kind of let their defensive line take over. But I definitely, in the same way that Judah is very confident that the Brock Purdy regression game is coming. The Eagles regression game is coming too. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think it's this week against this Rams team.
Okay, I was going to say one of you guys would be right, but Eagles are realistically going to win by 1-3, and nobody would be right, which is would be a sad place for the Matchbook NFL podcast to be on Monday morning. Judah, for what it's worth, I was very impressed with Cardinals and what they were doing. You're going to back them against the Broncos here. Joshua Dobbs, Wilson. There was a lot of good stuff happening on offense last week.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been saying this for a while. At a certain point, we're just going to have to kind of upgrade the Cardinals. They're playing at good offensive clip. I have them as like the 12th best offense. The defense has not been great, but ultimately, neither is the Bengals for that matter. And I think right now the market's kind of pricing the Bengals as like exactly in between their kind of preseason prediction and their production now, which is like they've been probably the second worst offense in football, only behind the Steelers. And obviously we thought they'd be a top unit. And I think like we can exactly source like what's happening here. And I think the main thing is Joe Burrow's inability to scramble. I track like what I call true scramble passes, which is essentially when you like start the process of a scramble, but ultimately throw it. And Joe Burrow last season was the best in the NFL in this category. He added a point almost every single time he threw, essentially throwing on the run. I think that's another way of thinking about it. And this year he's been absolutely dreadful. He's not doing it as often, and he's lost his team about half a point per time he scrambles. That's a huge difference. And I kind of see that system. Like he has the calf injury, it's not going away. We know it's bothering him. That part of his game is not just going to kind of magically turn around. Now, obviously, they have all the talent in the world, and in theory, it kind of like could flip. With the snap of the fingers, but I just don't see that happening. And the Cardinals they're playing at an average kind of clip, and I'm going to buy that. And I think the Bengals, until we see something different, should be priced as a bottom team. Like there's no reason. They have nothing, with the exception of pass production, which we can kind of source why that pass production won't necessarily happen going forward until we actually see the Bengals start to play. Like I don't want to take this kind of like middle ground of pricing them as like maybe 50% of what we thought they'd be in the preseason and like 50% of what they are now. I want to lean into what they are now, and that's not a good team. This offense is really dreadful, and I want to buy the Cardinals as kind of this average team. We all thought they're tanking, but it does not seem to be the case through 4 weeks.
Okay, yeah, I'm expecting a big game from Michael Wilson again. I paid enough for him on my waiver on fantasy there, so I'm willing that into existence for this week. And Sam, big fantasy fan yourself, your best bet here. You're swinging for the Dolphins against the Giants. I mean, like the Giants could not have been worse last week. The clips of Manning looking at Jones throwing that pick six went viral, and they were just so funny because I think they just were everyone's Giants betting at the time, betting on the Giants, seeing that pick six. But yeah, take it away on why you think the Dolphins can cover 11.5 points.
Yeah, it's a really tough choice to have this as my best bet, actually, because last week I kind of went in thinking the Chiefs big favorites over the Jets. I was thinking they steamrolled them, and they just didn't. But I kind of undernard, and I'm back at the kind of heavy favorite well here. Dolphins 11.5 point favorites. I think it's in the early slate, isn't it? It's going to be the game on Sky as well if you're a UK viewer. But
yep.
What we've seen from the Dolphins all season, as incredible as the offense is, the defense does give you opportunities. The Bills scored 48, Chargers 34, even the Broncos scored 20. So this is a team that does give you chances to score. But if you look at defensive DVOA, even though the Dolphins are 29th, the Giants are 27th. So there isn't a huge discrepancy between those two in terms of defensive DVOA. Then you have the fact the Giants are coming into this. It's a short week. Miami kind of need to bounce back. Everything kind of mentally is going to be going for them, kind of really wanting to make a statement here after what was a pretty humiliating loss to the Bills. And ultimately, there's kind of two numbers that I think are just tell you everything you need to know about these two teams. You have, on one hand, the league's number one scoring offense versus, on the other hand, the 32nd highest scoring offense in the league. So, yeah, they're so different on offense that I think that 11.5 points, even though it's big, I think it's going to be beaten by a bit of a margin, actually. So for me, yeah, 11.5 points, I'm taking that every single day. And if this does go wrong, I'm not taking anything in double digits again.
Above 10, yeah. Again, I'll hold you to that. Control F, 10 plus, whatever way I can get that out of the sheet. So I'll be monitoring a lot of the guys' thoughts and next week on if it doesn't go well this week. But yeah, thanks as always, guys. Really enjoyed that hour. Sam, Judah, and Drew, insights on Matchbook.com. Full recap of the guys' bets. Great time around Red Zone to get involved on insights on Matchbook.com, but also on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. You can, of course, do your multiples in the 6 o'clock games, include the UK game or the later games as well. We'll be back, same time, same place next week. Until then, enjoy the weekend's football. Bye-bye.